Superman.
That was my first thought.
Sadly, he's otherwise engaged.
Classic. How many first thoughts exactly did you have before you first thought of me?
Hi there, I hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about a film that had a big budget and a lot of controversy. Let's talk The Flash. I had the pleasure of actually watching this movie in cinema and I had a really good time. I know that with the box office performance you would not expect this movie to be good, but it actually has a lot of heart to it, and I do think it had an unfair showing in terms of box office turnout. Like, if you take into consideration the controversies of Ezra Miller, the changes at DC in terms of the management, and then you have the mishandling of Henry Cavill as Superman, like, a lot of fans just chose not to see this movie because there was no reason to be emotionally invested. Like, this is the end of Zack Snyder's vision, and it's not world building anymore. Like, as much as they tried to trick people or get people out to see the movie by saying, oh, this isn't the end of The Flash, it was clearly the end of The Flash, you know? And it is a shame because I do think this movie actually has some strength to it, while there are some weaknesses. Like, it's not a perfect movie, but I do think that it is a good comic book movie. The director here is Andy Muschietti, who you might be familiar with from the It movies, and I just think that it's not Andy's fault per se that this movie was such a disaster. It's just, like I said, all of those moving parts. I will go into a bit more detail in terms of a rating for the film, so I'm going to go into light spoilers going forward. Starting at a neutral number like 5, we'll go up and down and see where we land. But let's get into it. Starting with the pros, I have to say what really works for the movie actually is Ezra Miller.
If I hit you in the past, will it hurt me in the future?
Wait, you said you have a date tonight?
Yeah. Wait, what were you doing?
Nothing.
I was really confused as to why they cast Ezra Miller as the Flash, because I just didn't see the potential there. But I have to say with this movie, he definitely earned the title of the Flash. Like, you could really see that Zack Snyder must have saw some potential in him, and he showed it here. Although the movie's gone through a lot of reshoots, you can really tell that Ezra put his heart into his performance, because he does double duty in this movie, and it's not like most times where you have an actor playing two characters, like they just change their outfit and they're basically the same person.
It's my face. Still my face.
Ezra Miller as a two Barry Allens, I have to say, he really does give you a contrast between the two, and I really like the dynamic between the two Barrys. I thought he did a fantastic job, and like I said, he really did earn the title of the Flash.
Speedy Gonzalez. Yes, I've done it many times myself. You can't just start.
It's a shame that this is the end of the line for him, but I really was impressed with his performance. Another pro for the movie is definitely going to be the Batman. In fact, that's why I'm wearing my Batman shirt, because I really do think that Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton stole the show in this movie.
Yeah. I'm Batman.
Michael Keaton is fantastic. Like, he definitely does bring back the nostalgia of the Tim Burton movies, and he shows us that he still got it. It was really nice to see him on screen. I loved every second of it.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
And also, I felt like when he was on screen, the score kind of sounded like Batman the Animated Series, or more in line with the Tim Burton film, so I really love that in terms of the nostalgia factor. But the other Batman in the movie, Ben Affleck, like, Ben Affleck will always be my Batman. I think he is the most accurate in terms of the Batman the Animated Series and the comics. Like, I just really do think he embodies that version of Bruce Wayne. And so seeing him here was fantastic. I love the action scene that he had at the beginning. It makes me really mourn the fact that we're not going to get a standalone Ben Affleck movie, because I think he would have really knocked it out of the park. But I was very grateful for what we had of him, so that was awesome.
I'd really love to stay and clean up more mess, but this little superhero needs his breakfast.
Goodbye, Flash.
Yeah, bye, Batman.
Another pro for the movie is the overall story. So in broad strokes, I really did like the fact that this was a redemptive arc for the character. Like, he makes some bad decisions, but he has to work his way to understanding why he has to undo those actions. And also, I love the fact that they really, in a short amount of time, made you feel emotionally connected between Barry and his mom. Like, you can really understand his motivation for his actions. I also love the fact that when we meet Michael Keaton's Batman, he actually empathizes with Barry, and he's like, well, if I had the opportunity to bring my parents back, I would do it too. And I thought that was beautifully executed, so that was definitely a strength for the film. This movie definitely has a great balance in comedy. It's not silly like Shazam is at times, and it's not dark like the previous DCEU movies. Here it was just right. They found like a Goldilocks in terms of the comedy, because this movie does have a lot of consequences and there's a lot of gravity in the situation, but just that interaction between the two Barrys, I thought it was really well done.
You don't want to be a superhero. It's scary, and I get a bug splatter in my teeth all the time.
Awesome.
And even Barry's interactions with other characters, like him and Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne, he likes working with Barry, but at a distance. Like, he doesn't want to have too much Barry because Barry is overbearing. And you can feel that with their interaction with them, and I thought that was awesome. The biggest con for this movie definitely is the $200 million budget and the crappy CGI. So that's one thing I think everyone will agree, is that the CGI in this movie is terrible. When I finished watching the movie, I was like, wow, this movie is really entertaining, but the CGI is just atrocious. I think it's because they probably changed a lot of things here and there that definitely ran the budget up, and they probably didn't have a lot of time or money to wait for things to be finished, but this CGI is not polished at all, and it really is upsetting. Another weakness for the film is the way it was edited. This movie feels like 3 films Frankenstein together, and we get to witness the monster, because this doesn't feel like a cohesive story. Like, yes, I said there's a strength in terms of the fact that it's emotionally impactful, but there are parts that feel like it was written by 3 different people. And I think if you take a look into the production, that partially is the case. Like, there are multiple people credited with writing this movie. It easily could be a 3-hour movie, because there most likely is a lot cut out. And it does feel kind of fragmented and all over the place. So, like, the main 3 lines that you have is, like, Barry and his regret with his parents and kind of trying to right that wrong. Then you have Barry going back and interacting with this other Batman. And then you have the storyline of Zod and Supergirl. And it just doesn't feel like it's all one story. It just feels like bits and pieces. As a critique of the film, I would definitely say it feels like there's some great scenes in the film, like some great sequences, like some great action scenes, some great comedy scenes. But it just doesn't feel like a well-flowing story. Another kind of miss here is, again, they used Zod as the villain. This is the 3rd movie. The DC universe has so many villains and so much depth to it. To use Zod again just felt very cheap and stale. I would have preferred a different villain, a new villain, someone more focused in the Flash. Like, I thought that would have been better, but then a part of me also feels like they probably just threw their hands up in the air and said, well, like, this is the last movie anyways, let's just put Zod in there. We're not getting any sequels or follow-ups, so whatever. Another weird part of the casting, I have to say, is Sasha Calle as Supergirl. I didn't really like this version of Supergirl they presented. Yes, I understand it's a multiverse and, you know, there's some changes in the character, but I felt like the way they presented this androgynous version of Supergirl, it really defeated the purpose of Supergirl. Because the way Supergirl is portrayed in the comics and other versions of her on television of the TV animated series is that she's like this bubbly cheerleader, right? And she looks very unassuming and she doesn't look intimidating at all. And then when she confronts you, she kicks your butt. And I think that's like the cool thing about her, is that she looks very feminine, but she's also very strong. Versus this version of Supergirl that we got, she's very masculine, she's androgynous, she shows her strength by like horking spit and blowing something up, which wasn't ladylike at all, and I just thought that was like really betraying the essence of the character. So my overall rating for the film is 6 out of 10. I know that's a bit low, but the movie, while it is enjoyable, it is very flawed. It does try to tell a good comic book story. It tries very hard, I would say. And with the graphics being so terrible, like it's very hard to give this movie a high score, but it is entertaining. I do recommend it if you are a fan of just good comic book stories. I think you'll enjoy it. I was very sad at the end of it because it just goes to show you there was so much potential with this universe. Like, I think Zack Snyder had an amazing vision, but there's just so many hands in the pot. I really do think if DC leaned into like a darker approach, like a more mature approach, which DC Comics tends to be, they would have done fine. It's just that when they tried to be a bit more like Marvel, especially hiring Joss Whedon, it really backfired and didn't work out well for them. So that's unfortunate. And now we're in this James Gunn era. And I'm going to go into a little bit of a rant here, but I'm not on board with James Gunn taking over. I don't think it was the right choice. I do think that he's already made some questionable decisions. Like, for example, you had The Flash that just bombed. And while you might not put the blame on the director's feet, I just find it very interesting that he's already hired or announced that Andy Muschietti is going to be the director of The Brave and the Bold. It's almost as if like, okay, well, you weathered the storm with The Flash, so I'm going to reward you by directing this movie. Then on top of that, like, you're wanting to close off these characters, but then you let Jason Momoa have an end scene credit, which is, by the way, the worst end scene credit ever. It doesn't do anything for either film. It doesn't really promote Aquaman 2. It doesn't do anything to really tie up the ends of The Flash. It was just very strange and misplaced. He just is very adamant that he wants to get Henry Cavill out of everyone's minds. So much so that James Gunn prevented the Flash team from using a clip of Henry Cavill in the movie. And that really added salt to the wound for me, because you let Gal Gadot, whose movie like did horribly in 1984, and you let Ben Affleck say goodbye to their characters, but then you're not going to bring Henry Cavill at all. So things like that kind of make me scratch my head in terms of Warner Brothers' decision to trust everything to James Gunn. Also, I don't know if you've ever seen Brightburn, which is like an offshoot story of Superman, but it just goes to show that James Gunn does have like a little bit of a twisted and darker side to him that I don't necessarily think it jives with the general public. So I don't know if he's going to keep things kind of in the middle like with Guardians of the Galaxy, or if he's going to go in a weird direction. And the third thing I want to say is that like if you're going to completely cancel Zack Snyder's vision, you want to start the DC universe from the ground up, I do think you need to cancel Robert Pattinson's Batman and Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movies, because those are competing aspects within the same franchise. So I don't really understand why they have so much on the go at once, but they're trying to make this new universe. Even now, I don't think that Warner Brothers is heading in the right direction. I'll be very interested to see what happens, but I'm just a bit skeptical. But that's all I have for you today in terms of The Flash. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen the movie. Did you enjoy it? Also, do you think that they've missed the opportunity to cast Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne in a possible Batman Beyond movie? I think that would have been really cool, but I think that they've used him for The Flash. They probably like burned any opportunities for him to do future movies as Batman. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. But like I said, that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content here, please consider giving me a like and a subscribe so you can see what else I've been up to. But that's all I have for you today. So take care until next time. Bye.
I don't call myself Super Batman.
Wait, he's Batman? What did you think we were doing here? I thought this was the cousin's dinner.